Live from the NJ.com studio comes the only weekly TV podcast you'll need, where a lofty critic squares off with an obsessed superfan on everything from highbrow drama to lowbrow reality. The cocktail shaker is ready. Prepare for your TV hangover. Now, your hosts, Vicki Hyman and Erin Medley.
Hey everyone, welcome to TV Hangover. I am Erin Medley alongside the beautiful Vicki Hyman.
Hi Erin.
How are you?
I'm good.
Vicki, I'm so excited. I know we normally do our show intro right now, but we have a special guest on the line, Danielle Staub, formerly of Real Housewives of New Jersey. You are the Real Housewives expert. I am the Real Housewives super fan. This is so exciting. Danielle, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Erin, and hello, Vicki.
Hi, Danielle. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. After that introduction, I should be excellent.
We've been wondering, what have you been up to in these 6 years? I can't believe it's been 6 years since you left the show.
It is amazing that it's been that long, isn't it? My daughters were, I guess they were 9. Well, when we started this show, Jillian was 8, and I think Christine was 11, and then by the time it aired and I had left, Christine was 14. Well, you do the math. I guess Jillian was 10 or 11 years old, but they're now 18, and Jillian's 18 and Christine's 22. I've been raising my daughters and trying to do everything I can possibly to restore some normalcy to their lives. Christine has done an article that got put out, and it was beautiful about what it felt like for her to be on the Real Housewives and be the daughter of me, being, speaking about myself in the third person. And I just felt horrible knowing that my daughters, both of their experiences was just horrifying. To watch their mother be treated that way, and for me it was horrifying to watch my daughter's faces while I was being treated that way, because they were not always focused on camera, but they were in the room, and they were always there, and it's just hard to recap every moment, but it was volatile to say the least. So what I did is remove my children and try to restore their childhood.
Oh, I hate to bring it up, but how about Danny Provenzano? Are you still pals with him?
Well, here's the thing, and I don't want to get myself into any trouble, so I'll try to be very political and very quick when I answer this. I was not friends with him. I was forced to film with him. I was friends with his wife, who I started to film with until he objected. And then you guys can figure out what happened after that. That's why if you really do replay my face whenever he was around, it's a little odd. People think I'm odd, but my face was kind of like, am I really filming this with him? Why is he here?
So when you were on the show, you didn't know anyone prior to filming?
No, well, actually, that's not true. I didn't know anyone prior to signing contracts with them. We all went to the same salon, but then when I realized during filming, before we started filming, I started to realize some of the stories they were telling were parallel with Nisha Nails and the place that I used to go with my kids and the friendships I had with the owner of Nisha Nails and all throughout my town. And then I remembered these huge parties my husband and I would throw, and he called it my coming out into society, because we were members of what they would consider high society. His family is on the board of all the banks, and I'm not going to get into too much detail, but it doesn't make me a better person. It just means I was in a certain setting and a lifestyle with my husband and the father of my daughters, and this family taught me a lot about etiquette and a lot about, social life, society. Country clubs. I mean, we're members of the Alpine Country Club. I mean, that's not where I got my hair yanked out. Alpine doesn't allow filming there. So I had never been to that country club, ironically, even though it was in my town, because I was a member of Montclair and Alpine. That's where my husband and I went. And I was like, oh, this is a country club? That's interesting. Okay. No offense, just okay. Like, I didn't know. I wasn't looking down at anybody. It just wasn't what I was used to. So back to my story, the Brownstone was interviewed by my party planner and had their plates put up for tastings by my husband and I, because our parties were quite expensive, and I'm not going to put a price tag on it.
Would you say they were more extravagant than Teresa's parties?
Well, I don't know. I've never been invited to Teresa's parties, but I can honestly say we paid for ours. And, yeah, and my party planner cost more than her parties, probably altogether, yes. Now we're going to go to Nisha Nails. I didn't realize at the time when I was raising my kids that the best friend to my manicurist was Dina Manzo, who was then Dina Lorita, and she worked there. And I can now remember Jen having conversations and complaining about who is now married to Jacqueline, her then fiance, Jen's then fiance, Chris Lorita. I didn't put any of this together until after Angela pointed it out to me, the owner of Nisha, that, do you remember Jen? And then people start pointing things out to me, and I'm like, oh, my God, wait a minute. That's right.
So, Danielle, just so we want to make sure we have these connections correct, you went to a nail salon where your manicurist was best friends with Dina Manzo, who at that time was Dina Lorita, and your manicurist's fiance was Chris Lorita, who's currently Jacqueline's husband. You bet.
And not only that, Dina's ex-husband, the father of her daughter, is the owner, Angela, one of my closest friends, Angela's brother.
Oh.
It gets more deep. Dina started there as a stock girl, and she worked her way up to a manicurist. I never had a manicure or pedicure from her, but, you know, I can't say that I would know how she was professionally. I just remember a lot of, when there's 30 girls, young girls, mostly Italian, prominently Italian in this area, in the area we were in, you know, painting nails. I remember Dina's a little younger than I am. I'm the same age as Caroline. She hates when I point that out. You're welcome, Caroline. Yep, 54 this week, darling.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you mentioned earlier in the conversation that you don't even know how to work your remote control. So I was wondering, have you actually been watching the show since you left it?
No.
Not
I haven't
even
watched
an episode.
any of it. No, not even one episode. I get all of my information from social media. People will send me a link with a little, maybe a scene that's like a 30-second scene, and then they'll type something, you know, that's limited on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But I'm very, very in tune with what's going on, and thank God for an iPhone because I can't even work my laptop.
What is your relationship like with Andy Cohen at the present?
I love Andy. He's recently been so kind to me on social media, and I think once I got past, I've been in a lot of pain for what happened towards me and how they all ganged up on me on that show, and the way that mainly it resulted in affecting my children emotionally and our growth. Like, we had to work through a lot of pain. And I think I was misplacing a lot of blame on Andy because it was just easier. He was the loudest and the biggest face to the Housewives franchise. And there were times when he would really try to chime in and just give me a little pat on the shoulder. But I was just so hurt, so I acted angry, like, no, Andy, I got this. Or I'd be snotty, you know, towards a reaction when he'd reach out to me on social media. But recently he did something that was so big, and it left me in tears a little bit, but happy tears, when I accidentally, and this is the God's honest truth, I accidentally saw an alert come up on this live thing on Facebook, and it said Andy Cohen live, tea time. And I'm like, I love tea. And I do. I love tea. And I'm thinking, oh, I want to see what this is. So I click on it and on my iPhone, and all of a sudden he goes, oh my gosh, my favorite housewife of all times just tunes in. And it's Danielle Staub. And my reaction was this: oh my God, can he see me? That's all I thought. I'm like, and my daughter goes, oh, Mom, please interact with him. And I'm like, what? She goes, interact. I go, oh. So I did, I said something, and then he talked about me for a minute or two, and then, moved on. But he was very gracious towards me.
Do you think by...
but Andy and I are fantastic to answer that clearly and put it out at the end of that sentence.
Great.
Fantastic.
No, that's wonderful to hear. You mentioned earlier that you were hoping to get back on the show either at the reunion or for next season. Do you see that as your opportunity to redeem yourself, to show people who you really are?
I think it would be an absolute wonderful way to... I'm not looking at it as redemption. I'm looking at it as a way to receive the rightful apologies and the rightful place on the couch for me to be able to ask the important questions. Why would you say things like that? And tell people why you lied. Or just tell people you lied.
Isn't saying nasty things and sort of lying about people like really what Real Housewives is kind of about?
That's fine. I just wish they would retract some of the things that made my life for the past 6 years, not just my life, but my daughter's and my life, very difficult, next to impossible.
Who's they exactly? Do you mean Teresa or Jacqueline or the producers?
Teresa and Jacqueline mainly, yes. But, there are the puppet masters, Caroline and Dina. Caroline, I truly, truly believe was always at the helm because I just know things as an insider. Being a part of that original cast, it would blow people's minds. But I never spoke about it. I knew what Melissa was up to. I knew she wanted desperately to be on that show. I knew what Teresa had done well before anybody did. And it wasn't because I went looking for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Melissa was so desperate to be heard and seen because the cameras were always in the same room as her, but nobody ever saw her for 2 seasons because Teresa made sure of that, according to Melissa. And I remember going to dinner prior to filming and with Teresa, and now I know her as Kathy. Now I know who Melissa is. I know all the characters, but it was a lot to take in. Imagine being in a room with that family, and I don't know any of them. Mm-hmm. And then being asked by each one of them if I go to the bathroom with them. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. You want to come with? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. And then Teresa would grab my arm, and I'm like, what? You got to go too? I didn't know. I'm a lot more naive to evil people than people would like to think. I think the best of people at all times, and I'm always trying to make sure that people can stay positive. But being attacked at that level really did something to my spirit. And I'm not saying feel sorry for me. I'm just saying it's relatable to people.
Well, I guess I have 2 questions then. Like, why would you come back for the second season after all that went down in the finale of the first? And then,
because I deserved the paycheck. The first season was almost nothing.
So you got a raise for the second season.
I deserved that because it was my story, my past, that they were all telling in accordance to them that cemented them as season 2. There would have never been a table flip if I had not been in that room. What is the most infamous moment in Real Housewives of New Jersey's history?
The table flip.
There you go. Who was she going to flip it at if it wasn't me?
There would have been a lot less drama that season if you weren't there. I think that is absolutely true.
There would have been no drama. It was only 6 episodes, if you recall, the first season.
Exactly. Thank you, Erin. Yes.
It would have been.
And then the reunion drug out for 3. We had the longest reunion in history.
And now we can't get away from 3-part reunions. All of the Real Housewives reunions are plus.
Again, it was a game changer. Not that I'm saying it's my claim to fame. I'm just saying.
Well, when you talk about coming back to the show, I mean, it's
I
not
guess
just,
back to your question, yes.
But
why
it's
would
not,
I want to?
Why would you want to? But it's not even like you have all the power when you come back. You want to come back for whatever reasons. You want to say what you have to say. But sometimes in the editing room, it can come out completely different. Reality stars don't always have the power.
No.
And how would you handle
that? No, they
that
really don't. None of them do. And I understand that, and I have a good grasp on that. But here's what I have now that I didn't have then. I have my daughters raised. I don't have to worry as much about how it's going to affect them when they go to school, how it's going to affect, are they going to get bullied? Are their friends going to have a perception? Are their friends going to have a perception according to their parents having a perception? I'm not going to have that worry. That's a huge stress lifted. And I have them emotionally strong and their support. And we talk things through. They are my best friends. Add to that the fact that I have an incredible support system built in with my boyfriend. And he's just he's my emotional stability right there. That's my rock. And knowing that I have someone to talk to and be able to trust someone's opinion, that even makes me more able to go in and understand that he knows there's going to be editing. My daughters know. The people in my life that are important to understand how it could be edited are okay with it. They're ready to battle it with me. In other words, the outcome, the onslaught of however I might be edited or might not be edited. Mm-hmm. They're prepared to have my back. I never had that before. Never.
How do you feel about the decision to bring back Teresa after she had, served prison time? She's a convicted felon. A lot of people who watch Bravo and probably who still watch Real Housewives.
You don't even have to finish the question. That upsets me greatly. It really does.
Why?
Well, I had to go through a lot of financial hits. One, very publicly, which is very well known, I had to file for bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. And I went into bankruptcy court. Everyone got approved. Took me 17 months. And then I had to pay a very high dollar amount to this part really upsets me. It just upsets me to know that I got investigated and the judge sat before me in an open court and said, because of Teresa Giudice and Joe Giudice and their 42 counts of fraud, we will have to investigate you. I got punished for their crimes.
But you still were able to come through the investigation, and your bankruptcy was, you were granted bankruptcy discharge.
My whole life was on hold for 17 months when I could have used the relief in a big way. I couldn't. I'm not going to get into detail because it sounds like a boo-hoo party, because it made me stronger. But it wasn't fair. That everything that they were doing, not just Teresa, not just Joe, everybody, it had a reflection upon my entire life, and I had to stay very quiet about that for privacy reasons and also for my children. Mm-hmm. I stepped aside. I stepped back, and I took the hits for all of them. Meanwhile, they were off doing all the things that they were doing. Whether they were enjoying it or not, they were still making a paycheck from it.
Well, one of the arguments that Teresa fans will say is that she actually did serve her time. She spent a year in prison away from her daughters. Now, you are somebody who had also gone through the criminal justice system a long time ago. You got probation, you served your time, and you moved. Well, you didn't serve your time. You had probation. You moved on. Do you think that Teresa, now that she's done her prison time, she should get a second chance?
Well, here's the thing. I'm all about second chances, and being as it's very relatable and to part of my past, but my backdrop, I should say. Mine happened when I was not even yet an adult, I did not have parents. I didn't have guidance. I did not have brothers, sisters. I also was not a mother and was not married. I wasn't responsible for anybody, and nobody was responsible or looking out for me. So I'm not saying my choices were better or worse. I'm just saying my daughters have now passed the age that I was getting in trouble. Mm-hmm. Me and their lives will go a lot differently. So now let's fast forward to Teresa, who has parents, who has kids, who's married, and on camera with a platform as large as the Bravo, Real Housewives, Bravo TV, NBC Universal, and the Real Housewives franchise. And she's committing these crimes. I don't think serving your time has anything to do with what got her there. My problem doesn't lay within her having served her time. My problem lies within the questions people ask me most, which is people in very high finance will ask me, doesn't it bother you? Yeah, it bothers me that this was happening. And when you were given such a wonderful platform, you have a support group, and you were still doing the things that you were doing. And then to compare me as a child doing the things that I did, which they then further embellished upon and still continue to. Jacqueline still continues to embellish and put things out on social media that are just not the truth. And, you know, why should I say that it's the same thing as what I went through? I can't say that. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't an adult. I wasn't married. And I did not have a responsibility to the public eye or to my children or to my family, my mother, my father, sisters, brothers, in-laws, cousins, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have responsibility for anybody or anything. I was a kid. So I don't think that there's any parallels with that other than the fact that our sentences, you know, we both went through criminal trials. That's it.
Now, you want to come back to the show. Have you actually been asked to come back?
No.
Okay, but you'd say yes if they did ask.
Quicker than a New York minute can pass by, yes.
Well, I mean, if you think about
it. I have been asked back in the past.
Okay. And
refused. It wasn't that I refused. It came down to The Wire in literally 3 days prior to filming, and I backed out.
Which season
because
was this?
I just couldn't face them. I was emotionally a mess. I was getting anxiety. I couldn't breathe. My daughters begged me, don't, Mommy. Even though we needed the money, don't, Mommy, don't do it.
Was this
Please
for the third season, or is this a later season?
This was the third. I was definitely not going to go anywhere near it. I couldn't even, I could barely, you know, gather myself emotionally. I was kind of a mess. And just, let's leave that at that. But fourth season and fifth season, I was asked.
So if you were to go back, Danielle, this season we have 2 new cast members, Dolores and Siggy Flicker. Do you know them? Have you met them? Seen them around town?
I do.
Okay, you do know them. In a friendly way, or
yeah, no, of course. I mean, Dolores has been an extra. I call them extras, but don't take that the wrong way. But that's the only way to put it when you hang out with the cast, kind of on camera, but you're not really on camera with them for 7 years. I mean, she's been in every one of the scenes that I was filming with where there were groups of people. She was always in the background, and she would ask me throughout the years what it felt like and how much she would love to be on the show. And I'm like, well, you're friends with all of them. Just, you know, let them know. She's beautiful. And I don't really have anything bad to say about her. I can't say that I know her well enough to have formed an opinion other than, yeah, I've seen her, and I've had every conversation I've had with her was either at an event or at a filming of The Housewives, and she was always very pleasant to me. Siggy, I met her. I was invited to several of her events in the city. Not really sure if I can say honestly I know her any better than I know, Dolores, other than she was just as kind to me. She never did anything wrong to me, and she was always very generous, generously inviting me to, her parties and her red carpets and her book signings, and we would have long conversations. But you're in a group in the middle of an event. It's kind of loud. So it wasn't so personal that I can say I formed an opinion either way, but I can say what I took away from it is that she's a really nice lady.
So if you were to return to the show, they could potentially be allies since there's no bad blood there right
There's
now.
no bad blood, no.
Right.
Is there any
But
bad
there wasn't
blood
any
with
bad
you
blood with the rest of the cast either.
Is there
as far
bad
as
blood
I
with you
know.
and Melissa?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just because you basically tried to out her attempts to get on the show.
No, I actually put her on the show, and all she did in return was deny the fact that she ever approached me and was talking crap about her sister and sister-in-law. And, I just recently was trying to clear up, like I told you, I'm not good on my laptop, but I was trying to make some room on there, and I accidentally came across these emails that were archived, and her name popped right up. And I went, oh, look at that. There they are. So, and it's not nice. It originally started on Facebook. So the emails came from, how when you get a Facebook inbox,
Mm-hmm.
it sometimes saves to your archives even on your laptop, even though it came from Facebook. I don't know how that happened, but
Neither
that's
do
what
I.
they were from. Yeah, but I'm glad it did. But then she would, give me her number, and eventually we would talk when I was filming, and she would want to speak to me every day about, outing Teresa and telling, I think it all began with the check fraud. There was her friend, and it was $1 million check, and apparently, I don't know, I don't want to overstep or say the wrong thing, but I was just like, I'm not inviting you to film with me. That's your family. I'll give you the chance to maybe get on season 3 because I'm leaving. And so I would forward all of her emails to the producers. And I would make sure they got it because she would ask me. And then eventually I told her at the reunion, because she would talk to me the day of the reunion too, I said, I'm going to bring you up. I don't know how, but I'm going to bring it up. And that was when Teresa jumped on my lap, And I was like, whoa, hit a nerve there. But it wasn't ever me trying to find information out about any of these ladies. I was approached, always. I found it impossible. I actually found it kind of funny to believe that people thought I would have any extra time when I was constantly trying to run for my life from these people. A, B, there's how many of them against me and my daughters? And not only the ones that were on camera, let's face it, the Laritas are 11-fold. They all have kids, too, and they all live in the area. So you can imagine when the cameras went dark, what my life must have been like.
You mess with one and you mess with all of them.
Well, Caroline's tagline, thick as thieves, well, she got the thieves part right. And so I would only have to say that it became quite messy for me and impossible for me to think about anything in the lines of retaliation because I was just so busy with all that I just mentioned. Plus, remember, I was writing my memoir during season 2.
No, I'm sorry. I have to ask this question. I've always wondered about it. Do you really think that, I can't remember who it was, one of the cast members dug up that book about you, or did the producers put that in their hands?
I absolutely 100% know that it was the cast.
Really?
Yes.
And wasn't it
because remember, it's a small town.
Right.
It's a small town, but it was an out-of-print book.
Mm-hmm. And it was Dina that went and did this because she did not like that Jacqueline and I were friends at the time. We were becoming pretty close friends. I mean, I drove Jacqueline everywhere. I drove Ashley everywhere. I would pick up CJ from school. I did everything for her because she was my friend. And that's what friends do.
So, Danielle, if you don't make it back on the show, do you think there will ever be an opportunity for you to reconcile with Jacqueline and Teresa and Melissa and sort of hash out your differences maybe in private?
No. They've had years to come to me and do that. It's not going to happen unless it happens starting at the reunion. And plus, I wasn't emotionally ready, even if they had approached. But they didn't. So no.
Okay. So what's next for you, Danielle?
For me, it would be really, really nice to have that resolved. What was your next question?
What is next for you, Danielle?
I think I heard some talk that you're going to be coming out with your own tell-all memoir.
Yes, I was working on that like vicariously, and it started to make me feel a little evil, and I didn't like the energy that it was giving me, and so I put it on the back burner for a little bit.
People want to know, whose side are you on, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton?
It's really tough because there's so much about both of them that I disagree with.
Okay.
Let's just put it that way. And I will remain politically correct in that answer. I am very close friends with a few members of the Trump family, but that doesn't sway my opinion.
Interesting.
When I say very close, I mean text almost every day close and talk once a week close. Yes.
So that's interesting. Although he's no longer the host, would you ever consider being on the Celebrity Apprentice?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that because did you realize that I was actually the first housewife asked to be on Celebrity Apprentice?
I did not.
I didn't. And then yet Teresa got the
my
spot.
contracts are still... No, it was Nene, actually. My contracts, I still have my contracts. I had met with Donald a couple of times. He won. He actually requested that I be the first housewife. And here's the part where I got mad at Andy. And I don't want to rehash it because bygones are bygones, but he told them that I had a conflict because I would be filming season 3. Here's the bad part. I had already filmed the reunion. He knew I had left the show.
So Andy ruined that. Andy ruined the opportunity for you. Shame.
I'm going to say now that I love Andy again, maybe it was just an oversight. I'm going to be the bigger person and say it was an oversight.
Honest
but that's
mistake.
why I started to get very hurt by what was going on and the fact that I would have been so good on Celebrity Apprentice.
You can still be good on Celebrity Apprentice. It's coming back.
Just with Arnold
I
Schwarzenegger.
would love to do Celebrity Apprentice.
We would
Chuck
love to see
Lubella
you.
is who cast me in it. And so Chuck, call me. He has my cell. Call me.
Chuck, call her. Fans want to see Danielle.
Or you know
on
what,
Celebrity
Donald,
Apprentice.
you know who I know in your family. Have them call me.
Well, Danielle, it was great. It was great speaking to you. We're so thrilled that you gave us this much of your time.
It was my pleasure. I set aside a good hour for you guys because I was looking forward to it.
So, Vicki, lots of information to unpack after our Danielle Staub interview. But what I found most fascinating is that she wants to go back to that crazy show that, you know, has taken her 6 years, she says, to get over.
Well, I mean, I think she also made it pretty clear that she wants a paycheck. She feels that she took the fall for a lot of these ladies, including that interesting bit about, like, being questioned about her bankruptcy because of all of Teresa's problems. So she wants her paycheck. Can't really blame her.
I can't blame her either, but if the show made you so miserable and made you that unhappy, why on earth? There are so many other reality shows you could go on and make money. She could have been on Mothers and Daughters. What was that show?
On Lifetime or Oxygen,
some channel. She could have been on that.
Well, her daughters never would have gone on it. Her daughters seem very grounded, very intelligent. I really liked Christine's essay that she wrote about like being a reality show victim, and now that her kids do not have to be on the show with her, she's ready to do it. Hey, go for it.
Look, I think it would be the right move for Bravo to bring Danielle back.
There's got to be some move based on the first 3
because
episodes of
it
this
is
season.
a snooze fest. But also, last season of Real Housewives of New York, they brought back Bethany Frankel, and now this season, they're having one of their best seasons ever. It's really good.
But was Bethany Frankel always better integrated into the rest of the ladies than Danielle was with...
I would say yes, but the ladies changed. Since Bethany left, they've added a few new housewives, so she had to reintegrate herself. There were 3 or 4 new housewives when she rejoined the cast.
I don't know what excuse they would come up with to have Danielle come back onto the show, since she's living in Edgewater, completely different life from what she was living when she was on Real Housewives, but apparently this is not an issue in the Real Housewives world.
No, you don't need a good reason to bring back a good housewife.
Ratings.
Of course. All right, so we'll see what happens with Danielle. Now let's move on to something that I think we're both in love and obsessed with, and that is Netflix's new show, Stranger Things. Premiered about 2 weeks ago. I hadn't heard anything about this show
That's
before
actually
it premiered.
one of the things that I love so much about this whole experience, is that in this day when everything is so hyped ahead of time, you'll get like 17 Entertainment Weekly stories about something before it comes out. I heard like little snippets about it. I heard like, oh, Goonies meets E.T., whatever, but it was so low key, and it really felt like I was discovering something, which you don't get to do anymore.
No, you don't get to do that at all. And the only reason I watched it is because our coworker, Bobby Olivier, who's been on this show, said, hey, have you guys seen Stranger Things? I watched one episode. It's like the Goonies. And I will tell you, the Goonies is one of my favorite movies of all time. So whenever someone says it's like the Goonies, I'm in.
It's like the Goonies and Real Housewives of New Jersey.
Negative. So I was very excited. So we both binge watched the entire series over the weekend.
Actually, I think I started on like Wednesday or Thursday. But yeah, I had it wrapped up in like 4 days.
And it was awesome. So if you have not watched Stranger Things and you want to avoid spoilers, now would be the time to stop listening and come back when you're done. So one of the things that I love most about the series, which I guess we should explain, it's about a group of kids in a small town in Indiana. One of them goes missing, so 4 friends, one goes missing, and there's a secret government agency that's been housing a monster.
Well, I think that they were doing experiments on children that you don't really know, which what we're going to discuss this later, leaves you open for a second season, that might have spawned this monster, might have created the universe, or might have just tapped into it.
Right.
Don't know.
Right. So Will is the kid. He goes missing, so the whole story hinges around the town, the cops, his friends, all looking for him, and this weird government agency and what it is that they're doing. So what I love most about the show, and I think I said this to you earlier, is it just felt like a really long movie. It was 8 episodes. They're all about 45 minutes. The last episode is a little longer. And each episode picks up where the other one left off. And that's really what I enjoyed most about it. I just felt like I was in the story. They never took me out of the story. And I so many good things I want to say about this show.
Well, let me talk about a couple of things I didn't like and still felt the show worked amazing despite. The acting, first of all. Some of the acting, not very good.
Is it really some of the acting, or is it just one person in particular?
It is one person in particular, although, and like, I will give a big break to children actors, and I thought they were mostly extremely charming, particularly Dustin, New Jersey kid, Gaten Matarazzo.
Oh, the one without the teeth.
Toothless, yes. And of course, the girl who played Eleven was really incredible, although she didn't have to she mainly had to just look haunted or scared or resolute, and she did a great job.
You know how I like to stalk people on social? So Eleven is one of my favorite characters. So the actress's name is Millie Bobby Brown, which, by the way,
yes,
her name is Millie Bobby Brown. She's originally from Spain.
Really?
I know. She tweeted a video where she was saying hello to the people from her home country, and she said it in Espanol. And she really shaved her head. And
well, yeah,
she's a total badass.
That wasn't a wig.
It was not a wig. Well, there was a wig, but
it
was not a wig. I loved her. But yes, she was a great actress. Who else?
So let's just talk about Winona Ryder.
Oh, can we?
Okay, I love Winona Ryder. I mean, I grew up with Winona Ryder in life. I think that she probably deserves a comeback as much as anybody. But I really felt that she was a little over the top here. She was. I could see the acting decisions being made in her head and then coming out of her mouth and in her expressions. It was like just too transparent. Yeah, I was not a huge fan of Winona Ryder in this.
I was not a huge fan of her acting choices either. I think she started out at a level 10. That was like she started at a level 10 and remained there the entire 8 episodes. I would rather her have started at a level like 4 and built up, but she was bat-esque crazy the entire time.
Well, her child disappeared. And
that's fine, but there was no nuance at all to her performance.
There wasn't.
But I know a lot of critics thought it was great, and I don't know what they were watching, but I disagree.
You disagree with the critics, not with
the
me.
critics,
okay.
Not with you. And I agree.
And finally, some of the writing was a little clunky. I don't think that the writing was necessarily the best part of this, but everything else was so amazing.
Everything else was great. And we should note that the show was created by the Duffer Brothers,
who were responsible for 3 episodes of Wayward Pines, the first season, which we really loved.
Which I think that's where we should head next, because Stranger Things was such a great show in this little capsule of 8 episodes. And honestly, I don't need to see any more. I like the story that they told. I like the way that they ended it. And I don't need a season 2. You know why? Because season 2s usually disappoint on a show that's so great in season 1.
Which we just discussed last week with
we talked
Unreal.
About last week. Oh, and Unreal continues to slide.
I still haven't seen this past week's episode.
Don't even worry
about
it. Anyway, yes.
I disagree.
Okay.
I felt, when I was watching it, it reminded me of the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Not because of, it was taking on a sort of tired genre and doing something really creative with it. Yes, all that. But I just felt that Joss Whedon had such a strong grasp of his characters and of the setting and of dialogue and of everything that I was comfortable. I was really comfortable with seeing what this guy has to do. And I'm not saying that every episode of Buffy was great. Obviously, it's not working on the same level as what this did right out of the gate. It was a different show. It also had to be more procedural. It had to have 20 episodes a season, whatever. But I'm very confident in these guys in a way that, with Wayward Pines, I was like, that was really good. I'll give a second season a try. I'm interested in seeing where they go next. They didn't hit you over the head with like a cliffhanger. They ended it, but then they left a few
breadcrumbs.
A few like tentacles.
Yes. Or whatever that thing was.
Yes. So I'm very interested in seeing what happens. Other people don't agree with me.
Other people don't agree with you, and I do have some background on what the creators are thinking of for season 2. But first, let's get to this email from Jack Lugo, who is one of our loyal listeners, and he says, having finished the show, I kind of feel the same way, and he thinks that there should be an anthology format. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this season, and the cast did a stellar job. The writing was brilliant, and I loved all the Stephen King 80s B horror movie references. However, I think it works best as a standalone story within an anthology framework rather than as a continuing drama. I could get with that. Like, I don't need to see these characters again. I really don't, honestly. I like them. Maybe I would like to see Chief Hopper and 11. Maybe if there's some flash forward element.
Well, that's what I was saying to you yesterday. How about like 10 years from now, and we do an anthology in the sense that it's the same... it's the same show, the same monster, the same other world, the Upside Down, but we move the characters along significantly to where they are in their lives. And another thing I really enjoyed about the 80s genre is, first of all, I am the exact age. I was the exact age as these kids, the younger boys. And it reminded me like that's what childhood was like in the 80s, and it's so different than today with your cameras and the phones and the helicopter parents. And it's just also interesting. So it was great to see a snapshot of what life was like then. I would love to see it 10 years later and how life has changed in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Yeah, and then in the 2000s. I wouldn't mind seeing this as an anthology, but through the years, kind of like what Fargo is doing.
But I think that what you'll lose there is that nostalgia factor, because no offense, I don't think anyone has nostalgia for the 90s.
Oh, I think you're wrong.
I will. You grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 90s. Well, 80s and the 90s. But I have no desire to go back.
Fuller House. That's all I have to say.
Yeah,
there are people who have nostalgia for the 90s.
Yeah, but that's a little different. I mean, that show's not set in the 90s. It's set in the present day. I think one of the charming things about Stranger Things is the fact that it was in the 80s. They were using these walkie-talkies or CBs, whatever they were, to communicate. There were no cell phones. They couldn't just call and say, like, hey, like, guys, you know, this happened, or, you know, there was no internet. It was just that feeling, and that changes drastically in the 90s.
Which I think would be interesting to see in the Duffer Brothers' hands.
Meh. So I read an interview the Duffer Brothers did with a publication I cannot recall, and I don't want to name the wrong one. One of the V's, I think, Vulture or Vox. And
was it Variety?
Oh,
yeah, I think
it was Variety.
I think I read the same one.
Thank you. But see, I got the letter right.
Yeah.
It was Variety, and they basically said, you know, they made it seem like season 2 would just continue this same story. They didn't allude to the fact that there would be like a time jump, or that there would be different characters. So who knows? Things can change. We don't know when they're going to start shooting. It doesn't sound like they've started writing anything. And they did mention that they have a 34-page document that explains the Upside Down and everything that happens there and why it exists. And in a season 2, they would want to explore that a little more.
Well, can I just say, speaking of like the mystery and the mythology, I was also thinking when I was watching of Lost, and how Lost also created this like strange world, and you were very curious about it, and you knew but they were so over the top with, here's the donkey wheel, clunk. Here's this, here's that. And they never really fully explained a lot of them. And here, it was so much more naturalistic that you were like, I wonder what's going on there. But like, you're just moving along. It wasn't like they're presenting you with these mysteries that you have to figure out. And you have to go to the internet and talk.
Right.
It was just a more natural way of presenting this world than Lost, which also makes it, I think, better in not demanding. You don't feel like cheated at the end when you don't get all the answers.
Right. But I don't need answers about the Upside Down world.
Well,
I really don't. I like the stories of the people in the real world, and their relationships and their connections. Like, had I never seen the monster, the whole monster part for me was least interesting. I like the relationship between Nancy and
Jonathan
and Steve. I like Barb and the relationship that Barb had.
Barb.
Poor
that's like a whole meme right now. Poor
Barb. Of all, spoiler alert, if you have not watched, Barb dies. Barb
dies. But nobody even cares about Barb.
I know.
There were 2 people who went missing.
But you know what, Vicki? Barb is all of us. Because
you read that same story.
No, I didn't.
Oh my God, there was a story in I think it was New York Magazine and Vulture. Barb is all of us.
No, she really is, because I would have been the Barb in that situation.
Oh, I was the Barb. I'm still the Barb.
I'm still the Barb too. I'd be like, Nancy, get your clothes on. Stop slutting around.
Although I have to say, Nancy would have gotten her clothes on if I had told her to get her clothes on.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Barb was not, forceful enough. And then Barb went and sat outside. Oh, look, yeah. I don't want to look. I'm not going to ruin it. But poor Barb. So the relationships, that's what I like the most. I could, the monster was fine, but that for me wasn't what drew me in.
And the monster did not draw me in. They called it a horror anthology. I was not really scared at any point. It was tense at times, but and the monster was like,
it was a weird flower head monster
petal
thing.
head.
I don't know what that was.
Sort of like alien-esque.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was not my favorite.
A little wayward pinesy.
Yeah, I guess a little wayward pinesy.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. It's really the relationships between the characters, the emotional depth of each and every one of the characters that's what kept me interested. And a really big shout out to David Harbour, who played Hopper. I've seen him in other things. He was in the Newsroom, and I thought he was absolutely great. And even when they did what could have been this cloying flashback where he's trying to save 11, you find out that his daughter, who we'd found out earlier had died of cancer, and he watched her die. It's very sad. I never felt like, ugh.
Right,
Yeah.
I didn't either.
It was
the
really,
only time
really
where
well
I felt, ugh, was Winona Ryder.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, Vicki and I have blabbered on enough for today's podcast. We do have a couple of announcements that we want to make. Don't forget to watch our Periscope Mondays at noon as a recap, or we break down the previous night's episode of Real Housewives of New Jersey. So follow us at NJ.com. Also, Vicki and I are working with our new BFF, Danielle Staub, on a Facebook Live to talk about Real Housewives. So when that happens...
But of course, we've got to get her to actually watch an episode.
Right. She has to watch in order for her to talk about it. When that happens, we'll let you guys know on Twitter. Follow us at TV Hangover Show, at E_meds, and at Vicki Hy, VICKIHY. And of course, you can always send us an email, tvhangovershow@njadvancedmedia.com. We will be back next week to talk about more TV.